Did you know, as you are hearing this, next weekend in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you can come and hang out with us. Watch out for Fireballs, our other podcast. Our Games Club podcast is doing a live show at the Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We will be there all weekend. We will be doing a meetup on Saturday night. Details on social media, and our live performance is at 3 p.m. on Sunday. We're not talking about anything Souls related. We're talking about Pilot Wings, which some could say is the Dark Souls of Nintendo first party flight simulators. So it's not Souls related, but we'd still love to meet you. If you are in the Midwest, come on out. It's a smaller convention for us. We're kind of taking a little bit of a risk doing it to kind of hit up some new geography. There are not as many like mid-sized gaming conventions as maybe we want. So come meet us. We're nice, and you can come to our table. We will give you buttons, including Bonfire Side Chat buttons, and we would love to see you there. So again, that's the Midwest Gaming Classic next weekend. That's April 7th through 9th in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and details on the meetup on social media. Come on out.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfire Side Chat. It is a morsely favorite. It is a small tucked little bit of honey that you got in your back pocket.
You had to pick the grossest candy.
You got a Charleston chew up your neck. Like,
yeah. And this week we are talking about Darkmaus, which is a game that was developed by a person named Daniel Wright and released last year, January of 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. Astute listeners will know that me and Nick covered this on Check It Out Comrade, but it is significantly a Souls-like.
Yeah.
So we are going to definitely do it. And it's also, we should, a couple things that's like interesting about it just is that it's one dude. Yep. Like it is, this is just this guy. He's real. If you go to the Steam forums, he's real active and like answering questions from fans. It's still kind of actively being updated, I feel like.
Yeah, he recently pushed out a 60 frames per second kind of mod for it.
So pretty cool. Like seems like a good dude.
Yeah.
So this is a game where in the world of Hazoth, you play a tiny mouse, and the world has been corrupted, and you need to figure out what happened and fight a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the plot's pretty slight.
Yeah.
Actually. Like there's not really like Souls like lore going on here.
No, it's very very straightforward. Go to the next place
Yes.
and deal with this. It's a kind of a medieval setting. This is it's like Redwall on PCP.
Yeah, man.
But this is a top-down 2D Souls game. And that shift in perspective is really, really important and integral to the way this kind of plays out.
Yes. In a way that makes us an interesting companion with Salt and Sanctuary. Like, there are different kinds of strengths and weaknesses that come from this perspective shift.
Yeah.
And it's very much, other than that perspective, though, it is like a one-to-one, like, what if this was Dark Souls? Like, you have the same verb set. It's the same kind of, like, slow, methodical pace. You attack on the triggers. Like, the controller maps on perfectly. And it is unabashedly a Souls-like. It's not like something like Shovel Knight where it's a little Soulsy. It's a lot Soulsy.
Yeah. The combat verbs are there. They're the same. You attack with the triggers. So you have a shield. A shield is an absolute necessity in this. I know go ahead.
I mean, I would say that's part of a larger thing where this is not a game where like build is really so much a thing. I would say like the shield's 100% necessary. So is magic.
Yep.
Like if you don't have an area effect, like there's pyromancies in this, and if you don't have an area effect spell, I don't know how you do it. It's all necessary. Like you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. It doesn't honor build variety the way like a Souls game does.
Right. Yeah. So something here, the movement is not pinned to a grid. This is not like a hyper light drifter or something like that, where everything is kind of laid out like tiles and you're moving along this. You don't just walk up, down, left, and right. Pressing a direction actually causes you to like rotate to face that direction, and the body kind of snakes behind it. So everything feels very, very fluid and analog in a way that a lot of other top-down games do not.
Yes. Yeah. And this kind of like little bit of precision there is kind of important, because threats are going to kind of come from all sides here. So orientation really matters. There's not a backstab skill, but everything takes more damage from the back, and you need to be facing kind of perfectly. Even so much so that like the width of your shield will make a difference.
Yes.
Because you have to actually block the arrow. In a weird way, it is like kind of more realistic in that respect.
Yeah.
Than Souls.
Yeah, it is. The collision mapping is very precise. I don't know if collision mapping is a word, but I hope I got the meaning.
It sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this also places kind of this outsized emphasis on attack animation, right? You're looking down, and so the way that your sword swings around will have a tremendous impact on what you can hit, right? Like, if you're carrying a sword in your right hand, you will swing from behind you to in front of you, or do like a stab, and you're going to hit enemies that are on your right, unless you do a special move that does a dash or some of that. So that precision goes both ways, both in defense and offense.
Yes. Yeah. You do get there's a inaccuracy in the notes here.
Okay.
It's a minor one. So there's a dodge dash you can do. Mm-hmm. You can dodge through things.
Okay.
There are iframes. It's actually necessary during the Sen's Fortress analog of this, when there are arrow traps, to dodge forward through them.
Oh wow. Is that an ability like an advanced dodge? Because I was having fits trying to figure that out.
I think it is something that you upgrade to.
Okay.
Your out of the box one maybe doesn't do it, but your out of the box one is worthless. Because you start out very underpowered.
Yeah.
And there's this ability system we'll talk about here in a minute. Before we talk about that, though, we should talk about how difficult and how hard this is, and how often you're going to be dying, and what kind of the game does with it. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So my opinion is that this game is too hard for me. I want to admit straight out, I did not beat this game.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
And I guess we should have said that up front, because some people. This is not going to be. We're going to talk about the kind of levels of the game, but mostly this is kind of. We're going to talk about the systems and what works and doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be closer to a review, and that's literally just. It's. I wish we could have peppered in some stuff that was a little bit less like frustrating in here, because we both beat Salt and Sanctuary.
Yeah.
But this is just going to be like a frustrating couple of months, or a couple of months of us being frustrated.
Yeah.
I don't want to project that onto anybody else, and this is. Like, I think this game is really interesting and kind of cool.
Yeah.
It is too hard for me in a way that I know I could do it. It just pushes past my patience barrier. And it's very intentional. Like, I think this is for somebody.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a bad product because of that.
Right.
It's just like, oh, this isn't how I would do it. This is made for a very specific experience I'm not interested in.
Right.
While still taking some value from the stuff that it does that's kind of neat.
Yes.
Like, I would love somebody to take this ball and run with it, and do make a couple of tweaks to make it a little bit, less difficult. So this and if it's frustrating to you that we didn't beat it, it's like, well, again, like, life is short. There's just we have limited time on this earth, guys.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned, you have a bloodstain mechanic that is the same as Souls, essentially, except it's called Marrow, but it's Souls. It's gross. The big kind of innovation here, and what this game does that I think is actually really clever.
Yeah.
If it didn't become necessary, like it's like super clever until you have to start gaming it to succeed. But you can get an item in your inventory that for every one of these you hold, after you die, you will spawn a ghost. And this ghost will follow you back to your old place, where you died, fighting along with you.
Yeah.
Its abilities are kind of dependent on yours. You can buff it with an ability as well, and you can get multiple ones. And it will move as far as either until they die, they have health, or until you get to the point where you died.
Right.
And then they will disappear. So it has this kind of neat, like, it's a the poor get richer mechanic.
Yeah.
You never hear that, but like it's the opposite of the poor get poorer mechanic. Like if you have difficulty, the game's going to give you a little bit of a leg up.
Yes. And so this helps you in a big way get back to where, you already died, and hopefully address the challenge that killed you there. And no further, you have to make progress into new places on your own. But like this is kind of one of the sole quality of life convenience kind of things that they give you. And it is a really good idea. Like when we say ghost, like this is like racing your ghost in an SSX game.
Yes,
or like
it's a
Mario
little
Kart.
misty version of you. Yeah. It's really clever. And it's I actually I like every part of this. Like I like that you have to go into a new area alone. So it kind of, you don't just kind of come in and stomp something. What I don't like though is that the rest of the game is tuned around this to where, if you get to a boss and it's really, really frustrating, it is a legit tactic to die to it 3 times. You can bring in a trio of ghosts.
Yeah.
Like that's, and that just kind of like, it's not super fun, like going through and killing myself to get this thing, I almost would have rather it be tied to a resource or something like that, or have you be able to invoke it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like it falls down when you run into difficulty walls. It works really well when you die to a stray, an unexpected knight or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, it's like a hedonic treadmill almost with this. It's like, hey, we have this feature that is a really cool idea. That makes the game a little bit easier. Well, we can balance the other side of that even more to, just assume that they're going to do this. And it doesn't work well when you're, when it becomes a system to exploit rather than a system that's there to like push you from the back.
Lets you make a little bit more progress.
Yeah.
Like lets you get to the next new thing, which is what you want in any video game, but specifically a Souls game.
Right.
Where that's a big part of the draw. And these kind of cease to push you up.
Right.
Which is a bummer. One of the reasons why it's so hard and you're so likely to have to abuse this system is there's no Estus in this game.
Right. You find more souls, you find health items, but these are not Estus in the sense that they do not recharge. It's not like everyone you find increases your max pool. No, these are finite. They're out there in the world, and when you use them, they are gone.
Yes. And I think this sucks.
Yes.
I feel like that really does... and they make up for this in a weird way because bonfires are really numerous.
Right.
It is, it's very dense. So you're just trying to get through this little stretch, and they design it so those stretches, you don't really need a morsel. Mm-hmm. I think is the idea. Like you get through this with your full health bar. You don't need to make it, that's the number of mistakes you need to make. But then they just ramp everything up. Like there's just a part, like eventually every trap and enemy will 2-shot you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's just not enough mistakes for this bonfire density.
And that is an important thing. And it's something we talked about a lot in the Dark Souls 3 season and a lot in the Bloodborne season to a certain extent. But you need to be able to fail a couple of times, even just like to have that dramatic arc of a fight or an encounter where you're on the ropes and then you come back. There's nothing that I can learn. There's nothing that really makes me feel good about just feeling like I got lucky that one time.
Yes. Which is like can be expanded to a larger discussion about video game difficulty in this subgenre.
Right.
And it, full disclosure, like we're playing this in the wake of the second DLC, so it's obviously
it's informing us. Yes.
Yeah, it's informing us and just really calcifying some feelings about video game difficulty that have been brewing, since Defiled Watchdog. Like Defiled Watchdog lifted his leg and like fertilized a seed.
Yeah. Oh god.
It's like, kind of fiery crankiness about this specific thing, but it really is true. Like you can't, you go into an area, I walk around a corner, an arrow hits me that I could not have known was there. And then a guy runs up and backstabs me and I die. Like I've learned that arrow is there. I didn't learn anything about how that guy fights. I didn't learn anything about like his moveset or what's in like the rest of the room even.
Right.
So the progress just becomes so incremental and kind of memorization based that it's so micro iterative.
Yeah.
That and something that is kind of a big part of this camera. I'm not sure if you have this elsewhere in the notes. You can't outrun things in this game, and that's a real deadly flaw to this. Like I think there's a contingent out there of people who think that is a bug and not a feature in Dark Souls, like the fact that you can speedrun it.
Right.
And it's always, even the ones that I love, even parts I love, I never meticulously clear them out every single time. Like, it's like, I've done this, I want to get to the next challenge. Again, that's such a big part of these games.
Right.
Enemies, like, if you run at a full sprint, I feel like at least like more than half the enemies can catch you.
Yeah.
Like,
the early ones cannot. However, beyond, let's say, the first two areas, you end up fighting other mice who are similarly spec'd to you, and also because they're computers, they know how to kind of maximize their lines.
Yeah, that's and they're probably not running into unknown territory,
right?
Or they're not running into unknown territory. So like, you can't if you've gotten 50% through an area and you're like, I just need to get to this fucking bonfire. You can't run through that first 50%, because even if you do happen to make it somehow, you're going to go into the unknown with a huge tail.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have huge leashes, like nothing gives up pursuit.
Right.
And it just makes the experience of playing it's like, I think that's ultimately the fatal flaw of this.
Yeah.
If I could just keep trying the hardest part that I've got to until I beat it, like, I probably would have stuck with it and beat it.
Yeah.
It's just every single time I have to slowly, methodically kill everything.
Yeah.
Really killed the game for me.
Yeah. Something we haven't articulated: when you train to a bonfire, you get there, and like Dark Souls, if an enemy is too close, the bonfire will not activate. Like,
yes.
If you have not by some miracle, shaken your tail, then yeah, that bonfire is useless to you. So like, it is mandating, again, this sustained perfection, this kind of methodical clearing of every level to get up to it, which again, there are different schools of thoughts. Both of us happen to fall on the same side of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel of the stuff that it quotes from Souls, it feels like that is an incredibly valuable one to just kind of leave on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and I can enjoy methodically clearing something.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I love that. I actually, it's a big part of games that I like as well. I just don't like doing it over and over and over. So it just becomes the repetition. Like, there's Body did a video, like, let's look at this when it was early. And one of the things he compared it to was like Hotline Miami, where it's like, you go into a room, you have to size it up, you're going to die. And then you kind of choose the order that you're going to take things out. And there's a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. But when the enemies have the defensive vocabulary they have, and when they take as long to kill, it is like a slow motion Hotline Miami. And I'm not the only person to say this, but like, Hotline Miami would 100% not work if it wasn't instantaneous.
Oh yeah. Like,
everything is a flash second. Like, you reload instantly, enemies die in one hit. Everything has to be that short to be that loopable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I'm sure, like, if you would graph, like, okay, here's the distance that you got on every one of these runs, and you look at the area under that graph, that's all the time you spent playing. So like, we've talked about this, or we think we said it off the air, like, okay, you get 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. That is a lot of time doing the same thing over and over again. That is kind of mandated. That is, admittedly, in small doses, a huge part of this genre and this experience. Leaning on it so hard and going whole hog on that particular side of it does lean into stuff that does burn through an experience that burns through patience, right?
And yeah, 100%. I think part of the reason why they do that too, so when we look at all the mechanics, like the enemy space, the fact that bonfires won't activate when enemies are close, I think part of this is maybe to paper over the length because this is a short game.
As the crow flies, it's incredibly short.
Yeah, they're like 5 areas. Like that's not quite true, but there are not very many areas to this game. And if it wasn't so crushingly difficult, like, you could kind of breeze through it.
Mm-hmm.
And, because of many reasons that we've gone over 1,000 times, like, that's undesirable for some.
Right.
As a thing, and makes sense to be. People would maybe complain about that. That would maybe affect this guy's economics. So I understand that. Yep. But it's not the way that it's never a way that I want to add length to something.
Right.
Yeah. Bonfires work mostly the same as we mentioned, other than the fact that you can't light them in advance. They're also where you can allocate your marrow. One important thing we didn't mention about marrow is not souls. It doesn't drop from every enemy.
No.
It's a treasure and has a random chance to drop from enemies. So again, is it kind of just a mean design decision? Like, you don't, let's say you're doing this shuttle run, you're doing, I can get 50% through this, I keep dying, but I keep getting back to my body to pick up my souls because of these ghosts. There's no guarantee that your souls are going to be increasing every time,
right?
Which is a really elegant way that the actual Dark Souls games, I need to stop saying souls because it refers to a series and a object.
Right.
You pick up your marrow. One of the really elegant ways the Dark Souls games,
you're emphasizing it weird. Say it again.
The Dark Souls, the Dark Souls games. It's one of the ways in the Dark Souls games makes it so, if you're having a hard time on something, it gets easier,
right?
Because I'm making it 50% every time I'm killing the enemies on the way. I'm leveling, I'm getting more and more souls till eventually I get to my souls, run back to the bonfire I've already cleared, go up a couple levels, and it's a little bit easier.
You'll have something to show for the struggle.
And that almost never happens here because most enemies don't drop experience. Most of the experience is tied to exploration, which is fine on its own, but it just makes it, you don't get very much more powerful,
right?
In this game. There's not that feeling to it.
Yeah. And also that's probably a consideration for the length as well. There's only so powerful you can get.
You are so underpowered by the end of this. Like you gain very few levels. And I think this is kind of a flaw. So like you gain levels, you can put them into your attributes, which, roughly for lack of, map onto Dark Souls stuff.
Yeah.
And then weapon skills, which tend to be kind of minimums. Like you need long swords too,
right.
To do this. You get very, very few levels though. And weapons, there are probably like 10 weapons in the game. And they're spread throughout. So like, it's very tempting to put your points in the first weapon that you find because what else are I want to use that weapon. It's better than the weapon I have now.
Yeah.
But because you get so few levels and there's no respec, by the time you find a cool weapon at the end of the game,
a weapon from another class, one that you haven't spec'd for,
you just can't use it.
Right.
And Souls does that too. It's just they put in systems to kind of get around that.
Yeah.
I think
that was such an elegant situation in Bloodborne where they gave you all three as a choice at the beginning, so you could see.
Yeah, and even Bloodborne, like it's kind of a bummer that like they add, you don't get weapons for a long time, so you could still see the three different classes, but like, I wish that you just kind of saw all the weapons in the beginning of Bloodborne.
Yeah,
and at the very least, like in Dark Souls 2 and 3, like you can respec. So hey, I found this cool boss weapon. I really like to use it.
Yep.
Here's a way to do it. Not so in Darkmaus. So like I can't imagine anyone getting through the early game with your like shitty early weapon and saving enough points or specking for a weapon you don't get until 10 hours in.
Right.
It's just I just don't see that edge case, and that's just like really damages build variety.
Yeah.
And makes the levels are just too rare. You just don't level up enough to make that viable.
Right. Yeah. There's something you can do to kind of shore that up, which is they have this ability system where you can kind of give yourself perks, right? The nice thing is you can respec those. You can change them on the fly. So, for example, if you want to give yourself a spin attack because you're working with a slashing weapon and you decide, hey, this spear works pretty well for me. Well, you can just move that to something else that'll work better with a spear, like a dash attack or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I actually like this system a lot.
It's really good.
Yeah, and the fact that you can respec it everywhere makes it feel like you're choosing like just kind of tools from a toolbox. It's like inventory, Metal Gear, like what should I do for this mission?
Yeah. And your total number of available points actually goes up as you defeat bosses or as you find new areas. So you'll just be walking along, and after you kind of surmount a challenge, it'll say, hey, a new ability point. And that's like Christmas Day, because you can see the whole list on one screen. You can read all the descriptions and then just say like, oh, I'm going to take this one, but I want to give this other one next.
Yeah. And they do a little bit of, this is a little bit harsh because some things that seem like they should be in the box from the beginning are tied to this. So like parrying,
right?
You have to unlock the ability to parry. As we mentioned, you have to unlock iframes for your dodge, things like that. Like that seem like they should be part of the game on their own. Like the one thing about this is if they ever did like a Darkmaus 2, I would like to see some of those things be standard and a wider variety of these abilities.
Yeah.
So
that parry, that wrecks shop though.
Yeah, it's really great. Like it's good and the timing feels good. Like this, everything feels pretty good in this other than perhaps your movement speed. Like it's still, the same caveat we put on Salt where it's like this was made by two people. It's really amazing. Like this is one dude just making this in his room. Like this is pretty impressive.
Right.
It's just these tuning. It's just made for Ultimate Challenge, which Kole and I are not made for Ultimate Challenge.
No. Look at me. Come on.
Yes, exactly. We're 450 pounds of soft boy. Like, you don't need to roll this Katamari of weakness, like, down the hill into the ravine.
Okay. Don't put us in that ravine, please. Daniel, please don't put me in the ravine.
Yeah, no.
There is a caveat around this leveling, because there are mini bosses that will actually take on your build. Exactly. So the stronger you get, the stronger they get. And again, because these are AI, they are, hard to deal with. They can do more with what you got than you can.
Yes. Yeah. And these mini bosses are not the hunters, right? These are just the ones you find, because I feel like find mirrors of yourself. We should talk about hunters, because those things are fucked up.
Go ahead.
So, like, every once in a while, the music will change, and you'll just get this phrase that just says "you are being hunted." And it's really tense. What it means, it's the same thing as being invaded, essentially. The end boss of the game, spoiler, sends these agents out to get you. And this, again, would be cool if you had a chance in hell of, like, ever beating them. They are so drastically more powerful than you.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. Like, you're supposed to be really disempowered, but I can't imagine beating one.
No.
Like, it doesn't, because they don't show up, when you're, like, in an arena. Like, you don't choose it. They're not waiting for you. They come to you no matter what you're doing. So, like, this happens, you go in, you clear out a place. You can maybe run back to your bonfire and heal. But you just kind of have this curse on you that this thing's coming from you.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're either going to be fighting other enemies if you don't want to sit around and wait for it, or you just sit around and wait for it. And I've never had one not literally two-shot me.
Right.
And the first shot does 90% of my health. It's not like they do 51% of my health.
No.
And then once they get you, they very graphically and kind of awesomely eat you.
Yep.
Eat your body. And then you are at half health, which very, very slowly regenerates.
Right. Also, so they take all your marrow. Yeah.
They take all of your experience. So you want to go spend it if you can. And then you get cursed. And there's no item to get uncursed. It just glacially refills. Like real blood. It's like giving like somebody, you went to a blood drive.
Yeah. It's like Becky Hill, no amount of cookies or orange juice is going to get her back.
Yeah.
She competes with men. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't find a rhyme or reason for why these guys came out. It does a good job of approximating the oh shit, that kind of register change that an invasion does. I feel like it's more possible to come back from invasions than it is to come back.
Very much so. Yeah. Like this is this is like the hacked Dark Souls. This is like the hacked Dark Souls one. The guys where they have curse on their blade.
Yeah.
Like they literally curse you. Yeah, it's extremely rough.
Yeah.
And again, it would be kind of a cool mechanic if there was a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
But there's also just doubles you'll run into too. Weirdly enough, like there's lots of dark mirrors. Like, so every once in a while you just run into one of your doubles, and there's not. Again, this doesn't really have like lore stuff, so I don't really know what these are supposed to be. Like why you run into people who are your twin.
Yeah, the darker mouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shadow Shrew.
Shadow Shrew sounds good. Sounds like a good like Sonic clone, actually.
Yeah, I would play Shadow Shrew.
Yeah. So let's talk about navigation as well. This is top down. So I put this note in because it bothered me. I don't know if it'll bother you. As you're going, the map will rotate and twist and zoom in pretty subtly as you go, which for me makes navigation difficult because I like it when top-down games have a true north. That is offset by the presence of a map, which is merciful because some of these areas get a little bit labyrinthine. But yeah, I was not that big of a fan of kind of the cinematic pushes and turns that the camera did. Yeah.
I didn't mind this so much. And I know it's probably just different ways that our brains work. Like I was just able to keep my navigation sense.
Yeah.
Whereas like something like I got lost in Salt all the time.
Okay.
So there's something to that where like this is just like, I can keep track.
Yeah.
Of this. It does kind of neat things with line of sight and stuff. It has kind of Fog of War and line of sight that reminds me of like Ultima 3 on the Nintendo or something.
Yeah.
Where like it literally just fills in blackness where you can't see, and it does neat stuff with this. There are kind of with light in general. So like you have a torch. There's a mechanic in this game where you have a torch that will slowly run out the longer you explore, and your field of vision will get smaller and smaller, which encourages you to take time to rest.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why. Like that seems like you don't need that encouragement because you're going to be dying and hurt all the time, but encourages you to rest. If you keep exploring and I think it kind of almost functions as like you're going the wrong way kind of thing. Like you haven't run into a bonfire this long. You have this like pinprick of light around you. Like you've really fucked up. Like you need to, you're going to die, but this is not the way forward. There's some kind of hidden path or bonfire you missed. You can get torches that increase that. And the game gets around the kind of omniscience of an overhead camera by doing this light of sight thing. And then will give you peepholes into rooms sometimes. Yeah. So you can't, if it were a regular overhead, like a Zelda game, you'd be able to see what's inside the room. Here, like you have to actually hunt down this little, mail slot or whatever to look through to see what you might be dealing with. And I think this actually works really well.
Yeah. It'll, it gives you a little bit of that tension of a blind corner, because literally, the cone will expand as you go around it. It's technically impressive because it looks like there's a lot of 3D modeling going on to like establish the way the light flows. Again, one person, that is really cool.
I think we'll get to it when we talk about aesthetics, but I think generally this is pretty impressive. Yeah. Kind of visually, while being super minimal, but I think it looks neat.
Yeah.
And then the map is really, I don't know why you wouldn't have a map in a game like this. Yep. Like it's fantastic. So
yeah. Yeah. There are different weapon types like we talked about. Equip load is a real thing in this. If you go below 90%, you just crawl. is what goes on. Your movement speed is a percentage as opposed to having like an encumbrance rate.
Yeah. So you want to keep that down. You can increase that with stats, but again, stat points are very, very valuable.
Yeah.
There's one magic system in the game, which are pyromancies. It's fancy in magic. You rest at the bonfire, you get a certain number of cast. You can increase this with certain trinkets, which are essentially rings. I think they're ring necklaces, and that's like certain amulets. I feel like the magic is really non-optional, right? As a build, because you're going to run into a lot of like groups of enemies, and this is the only way for you to do area effect damage kind of consistently.
The nice part is focusing just on those two stats for your weapon. It's not that hard. Like if you just want to do strength and things like precision or something like that, the floors or the requirements for the most functional pyromancies are not that extravagant. So like it does accommodate that.
Yeah. You get eventually there will be, but I think there's like 5 spells. Like it's very limited in general.
Yeah.
And the most powerful spells, which are pretty cool, are do take a kind of a real dedicated build.
Yeah.
And but you're right, you can dabble pretty successfully in magic and should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can upgrade your weapons too. You get steel shards. And the game, I think in general does a good job of like reminding you of advantages that you have that you do that you're not taking, that you're not using, right? So it'll say like, hey, you have unspent ability points. Hey, when you rest at a bonfire, you could upgrade your weapons right now if you wanted to. That is good. That is a good use of interface, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. And it's kind of necessary because if you're not doing that, like, again, some of the problems that I had with this, or some of the difficulties, I guess, were in mapping soulsness onto it.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit on me. It's a little bit on the game too, because it so clearly wears that influence. But like for me, it gives you those messages because if you're coming at this like I did from a Souls background, you're thinking, I don't want to put resources into upgrading this because I'm looking for my forever weapon.
Right.
But in Darkmaus, like your forever weapon is like that probably is your forever weapon.
Right.
The third weapon you find is probably the thing you want to use the whole game, or at least the class of thing you want to use the whole game, because you're not going to jump ships partway through because of as we talked about.
Yeah.
Aesthetics.
Yeah. So music is pretty minimal. It's pretty inoffensive. Doesn't get in the way that much. It's nice. But this entire game, we haven't mentioned it to this point. It's in black and white silhouette. Kind of against these tan backgrounds. There are occasionally some highlights. You have characters with red eyes, or you have, green blobs on the ground, stuff like that. But like everything is black and white, or not black and white, but a black cutout seen from above against kind of this tan background.
Like sepia. like as what it looks like to me.
Yeah. And there's like this fog that kind of rushes around. There's smoke that comes off of your torch. The ghosts leave like vapor trails behind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it all looks pretty good. It makes navigation difficult because there can be fewer landmarks.
Right.
Obviously it's just the shape of the room, which is the same thing we ran into with Salt, or I ran into with Salt. Yeah. Except it's probably worse, except that we're dealing with such a smaller area in this, and you have a map. Right. Which kind of made up for it. So it allowed me to kind of like enjoy the aesthetic a little bit more.
Yeah.
As just being like a wireframe, like a cutout version of Souls. Let's strip away all the kind of cool looking enemies, which I mean, and I'm not saying there's not a bummer side to that. Like there's not one monster in this I think is a cool design.
Right.
That's not really what we're working with. There are no weapons I think are cool. There's no fashion Souls. There's no like any of the aesthetics of Souls are not present here.
Right.
It's just kind of, there's a purity to it though that I can't like hate. I think is actually kind of neat. While I would never choose it forever, it's just a neat to come up for air.
I think it looks cool. I had some trouble interpreting some of the stuff that it was trying to convey to me. So like doors are kind of hard to it was kind of hard to spot those as opposed to like a wall that had kind of like holes in it, which you see a little bit later. In that first area, those, what are they, like the root walls that you have to slash through? I had no idea how to progress through those. And there's just like a little bit of stuff where it's hard. You recognize that something's there, but it's hard to actually see and determine what it is and what you should do with it. Is what I ran into. That could be on me. So while I find the game aesthetically pleasing, like I love it when a game or an artist puts this kind of restriction on themselves and then just kind of goes for it. It got in the way of functionality just a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't have too much of that problem. For me, it was more of a having to check my map to see which hallway I was in.
Yeah.
Whereas there could be a statue or something that makes me know that in a game with more detail. No, it's also, it makes the areas where kind of departs from that aesthetic stand out. Like I think fire looks really bad in this game.
Yeah.
Like your bonfires specifically to me look like a joke. It looks like one of those little fire gifts that would be on, Helicopter Tech's Peaceful Skeleton Realm.
It looks a little bit like whenever Master Shake throws something on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There we go. Like, yeah, I think it's actually, they might use the exact same, like, it's like a stock After Effects thing, but the fire looks really artificial and weird in the world.
Yeah.
Like when something looks photorealistic in this very artful kind of thing, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
For me. So it's, for the most part, that works for me. The music I didn't really remember at all.
It's functional.
Yeah. It didn't bug me. Most of it is just ambient and quiet and just kind of lets you explore lonesomely. So we're gonna go through the game and kind of talk about what happens. We did not get through it,
no,
as we mentioned. We both watched a let's play of it, which is kind of a cop out, but like, you can take our half the amulet if you want, because it was too hard. But we want to talk about the stuff that happens, and I watched a let's play of it not necessarily to research, but because I was kind of like, again, I have like a little bit of goodwill towards this. I wanted to see like, oh, is this going to do something really, really neat? Right. At any point, like, is this going to open up and we're going to get something like, and that doesn't happen.
No,
it remains a modest product for the entire run. The enemies you fight, the bosses are fairly similar. There aren't very many of them. It ends sooner than I thought. Like you spend what feels like 60% of the game in this extended Sense Fortress.
Yeah.
Like if you imagine all of the rest of the second half of Dark Souls 1 just being Sense Fortress, like if you got up to the top, the demons just carried you to like the Sense Fortress overlay over Anne Orlando.
they carried you back to the entrance of Sens.
Yeah. Again. Slightly different, like just higher. And this is Duke's Archives. It just has Sense Fortress walls and traps come out everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like it is so just like Trap Castle.
Yeah.
Full of archer ambushes for like pretty much most of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go through. The notes are not that extensive, again, because most of what you see are enemies that are introduced and then iterating through them.
Yeah. So, and this will be a shorter episode because of that, but I still think it has a place in the show because it is such an obvious Souls thing, and it is like, it's hard to like. I feel like there's merit here. I just really want this guy to do a follow up and or someone to take this and run with it and kind of fix my issues with it.
Yeah.
The opening is really strong. I think that like the game gets more samey and hateful as you go. Mm-hmm. The beginning of it, I'm pretty on board with. So you wake up on a beach, and there are like these twig monsters that come through, but it has a really good kind of tutorial, doing real classic video game stuff, like easing you in. Here's a wall you have to smash through. Now there's an enemy you have to try it on. This first enemy only blocks. Yeah, things like that.
Here's a shield. Here's a weapon. Like it does a pretty good job. And this is in the game, a unique environment. You have the boats that are kind of beached up on the shore, and you have these overgrown paths kind of making inroads through the jungle into the island.
And there's lots of little secrets and stuff too, which I really appreciate. There's a lot of you should push against the borders because you're going to find either one of these walls you can smash through, or just like a sliver that you can squeeze through and get these kind of upgrades. You're picking the upgrades up from skeletized mice, but there's also skeletal dinosaurs and stuff, so I don't really know what's going on with that. Every once in a while you pick up some treasure from a dinosaur that died.
God, this is Site B.
Yes.
The dinosaurs have evolved into mice. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cute.
So. Yeah, I just designed a T-shirt, didn't I? Fuck.
The dinosaurs have evolved into mice? I think that shirt needs a little work. Oh, okay.
What's that?
I feel like that shirt needs a little work.
Yeah. No. I mashed up Darkmaus with Jurassic Park.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, it's not a shirt. No, it's not a.
It's it's like a third-rate, Tumblr DeviantArt.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Like put this on Facebook and like post it to the wall of the Jurassic Park guys so they can ignore it. So here you ignore this.
Here you ignore this, exactly.
Yeah. You destroy this when you format your computer. I don't want to destroy it when I format my computer.
Yeah. These enemies are pretty slow that you're fighting. These kind of night guys. They appear humanoid. They're a little bit hard to read. All you can see is that they're covered in vines. So they're like Swamp Thing kind of dudes.
Yeah. And there's going to be another reason why the notes have to be so quiet for this, or so slight for this, is because we don't know anything about anything we're fighting.
Right.
It's just not there. We're going to run into a boss for this area, and I have no idea why the boss is fighting us or who they are.
Right.
There's just that information just doesn't exist. So we don't know who these tricky things are. You eventually start fighting other animals. It's very mouse guard. Like the area kind of opens up, and we're introduced to spiders. And the spiders are interesting. They will only move towards you when your back is to them.
Yeah.
And this happens as soon as you get your first ability point, and the game encourages you to get the dash.
Right.
Which you have to use to kind of combat the spiders.
Yeah. So they will stay outside of weapon range and kind of like make a circle around you and kind of edge to flank and kind of surround you. So they will sneak up on you in a pretty insidious way if you don't either pin them against a wall or do this kind of dash move to make it happen.
And and there's too many of them. Mm-hmm. So if you do die on them, because eventually after you fight all these little spiders, we're introduced to medium and bigger spiders, which just take more hits. It's very satisfying when you can do that dash and just sweep across and take out 7 spiders in one hit, and then they just kind of up the ante a bunch, and then you have to do it again. So there's like that little bit of like, man, I wish I could run past things happens right out the gate.
Yeah.
It gets worse as the game goes on, but it's right there.
Yeah, you also find your first twisted figure around this time. So the my ghost ended up being a very good kind of tool for distracting them.
Yeah, and twisted figures are the item you need to get ghost, and you can get 3 of them in the game.
Yep.
So they also introduced wall spikes here, which I found that was like actually the geographical thing I found pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look that different than like thorns or something like that, and it's very sensitive and touchy. Mm-hmm. Like kind of making your way through here, and we run into an NPC.
Yeah, her name is Anna, and this is where you can enter your name. You tell her your name, and she says, "Hey, I will come with you and fight with you if you can get me to this kind of garrison, to this little building here."
Yeah, take me to the village. Here's the thing that sucks. Anna, you can hurt Anna on accident.
Yep.
Like you can in Souls, but something about the perspective and your wide weapon sweeps means you're much more likely to do this.
Especially if you're doing these dash attacks.
And once she's dead, she's just dead.
Yep.
That's it for Anna, and you unlock like the actual little village you can go to, which that's really overstating it. It's like 3 rooms, but
right.
You do close off a big part of the plot to yourself.
Right.
For killing her, and it's just so easy to kill her.
Right.
I understand why they didn't make her invincible, because she follows you with a bow and arrow and like will attack with ranged weapon, ranged. This is the earliest bow you can get. So I'm sure that it's like a pro strat to kill Anna and take her bow. But I found it very, I accidentally killed her and reset the first time I did it. And I was like, I wasn't trying to kill you. It's just the way this combat works.
Right.
My hurt box, you're crowding me and my hurt box is too wide around me. So
yeah,
I ended up actually switching to the spear just so I wouldn't hurt Anna.
Oh God.
So it's like, and the spear is like decent, but like, boy, it doesn't take care of multiple things at once. Like,
no, you need that sweep. Like that ended up being essential for me. Yeah. Her path, to get to this village, you need to go through this, the Huzoth Plains, which are kind of, like a desert is almost what it reads like. It's like a windswept, brushy kind of area.
There's the little like bits of thick brush around it that you can't quite push into. Yeah. You like try to push through and it kind of resists you in this weird kind of rubbery way that like kind of feels weird. And they introduce like one of the worst designed enemies in the game like really soon that have been like patched. Like these things have been nerfed because I'm not the only person to complain about them. But you start fighting crows.
Yep.
Like these birds, and they suck.
Yep.
These things suck.
There are lots of them. They come at you. They almost always seem to fly at your shield side. I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just the way that it worked out for me. And they make these kind of sweeping passes, and they just harry you, in a really kind of annoying way that I don't feel that it doesn't feel like there's an awful lot of recourse against them.
You just had to you had to time it kind of perfectly. The way we're describing it makes it sound easier than it is. Like it's kind of hard to describe how hard this is.
Yeah. Well, it's also mapping height in a weird way.
That's why I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like there's a Z-axis that's not being accounted for visually.
Right.
So sometimes they're literally flying over you, and there's no visual difference behind that.
Yeah.
That sucks. They patched them to make them slower and to take little breaks.
Okay.
So they'll land and wait for a second, and then you can kind of run up and hit them. But when that would happen, they're not synced. They don't do that in sync. So like one of them would land while three of them are coming, and I have to keep my shield up.
Yeah, it's like they were setting up a honeypot.
Because they chunk you. Like it's even this early in the game, like these things will do a fourth of your health. So it's not like you can put your shield down around them. And you can't play this without a shield. Like your dodge at this point, even if you put your 1 point into it, which you haven't because you need that dash thing, is just not good enough.
Right.
So these things suck.
Could have done without that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But it's good that they patched it. It's nice when developers notice that people are having a problem with the thing and don't just post a get good meme on their Facebook page.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It'd be a wonderful thing if, when you eventually take Anna, I'm swooping your point because I want to make a joke.
Yeah,
Sorry to be
okay.
rude.
That's fine.
When you eventually you get past this bird section, you take Anna to this fortress. You can leave her there. There are a couple of other NPCs. They tell you about this necromancer Xanatar, and if you go to Xanatar and wish to be small, it'll turn you into a pinky. And if you wish to be big, it's going to turn you into a skeleton.
Of course,
that's a mouse. That's their life. Can I walk you through the anatomy of that joke that didn't work as well as it did when it first occurred to me?
I laughed. It's fine.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a factual inaccuracy in it. So I saw Xanatar and I'm like, oh, it's like this old tar machine.
Yeah.
And then I was like racing. I was like, oh, and anytime we're talking about mice, referring to them as pinkies, I think is gross and cool.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a cool thing to do. And
that's a cool and fun thing to do. You should try it at home. This has been our YouTube series, Cool Things for Fun Dudes.
Cool things for teens. Hey kids, pinkies. But I somehow in that forgot that in the movie Big, Tom Hanks does not wish to be a little kid.
Okay.
He wishes to be something. I can't remember the word for it.
Yeah, I wish I was big.
Yeah, I know. So that's where
Gary,
like my
please, I'm worried about you. What are you?
Okay. It's when you try to I'm trying to cue up a joke while talking and fucked it up. But it's like, so I was like, oh, it'll be a pinky. And then at the end I was trying to save it by what there's not a word for an old mouse though.
Right.
Like it's not, there's not a word for an old anything. Like you're an infant and then you're just old. Like there's not like a separate word for that. So anyway, that's where that joke, was born, lived its entire life and died. Couple minutes.
Yeah. See, I saw Xantar and I thought about the gelatinous cube who eats the people in Noah's Arcade.
Yeah.
You can't get past the first level. Yeah.
I should have just let you go for it, and I apologize for that.
No, I wasn't going to go for it. I mean, I may have.
Let's release Bonfire Side Chat Blue and Bonfire Side Chat Red.
Okay.
With different versions of that joke.
Yeah, so people can trade their references to 80s and 90s movies.
Their dot waves. Slide a dot wave across the lunchroom table and be like, Pinky.
Xantar. Yeah.
He gets the square. And then just then together they can make both jokes.
Let's trade waves. Yeah.
Sorry about the Cole. Sorry that.
What?
Sorry to you, audience.
Okay,
so,
no, it's fine. No, don't worry. It's fine. You saw the opening and you ran for it. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah. So who among us has not mistaken the movie Big for Benjamin Button somehow?
Yep. Who among us hasn't? Hasn't reversed the purpose.
Big
Yeah.
Was.
Oh man. So this is some of the only exposition that you get outside of, a little bit of area names and boss names, saying this person's name and what they and what they do. And it's a pretty basic plot. A necromancer evil wizard has taken this kingdom and corrupted it. And it's up to you to stop it.
And you do. Or other people did.
Yeah, I mean, this one German guy that I watched did.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. This is where as you leave here, you run into your first gigantic bowl enemy. And these guys are kind of fuckers. They're meant to be visually intimidating and are. They will charge you, and you have to kind of dodge to the side. The big issue with these guys, I think, is that their turning radius is too good.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to get behind this thing because that makes sense. And you kind of can, but it will track you.
Yeah.
Really, really accurately.
Yeah.
So I find them hard to fight.
It doesn't fulfill the purpose of a bullfight, which is to let him charge and then get behind it.
Yeah. That's like 90% of video game bulls, but not here.
Yeah. No, like these guys, I like the way they look. It's kind of, I think outside of the hunters is one of the first red eye enemies that you find.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It works. I ended up kind of not killing them, but getting behind them or getting past them by luring them into the brush.
Yeah.
They get stuck there.
Yeah, because they're big guys.
Yeah. So you travel north here and you get into Samarkand Garrison, which is the outer wall, the first line of defense for the Samarkand castle, which compromises or is composed of the last 60% of the game. This is where the sameness kind of begins, with one notable exception we're going to get to next. But yeah, this is when it's all Sens all the time.
Yes. Yeah. And it gets Sensier from here. Like this begins Sensi. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to the prison, it's even Sensier. And then the castle is like Sens and out.
Right.
But this is the way it is Sensi. So we're running into way more mice here. Yep. This is around when I first got hunted as well. Which I think that's random, at least to a degree, and it sucked.
Yeah, I couldn't find a rhyme or reason. But these intelligent mouse enemies, they are real tough, especially because they work together. The archers do, and will just pin you down right as you run onto an area.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's a bummer.
Yeah. This is also Sensi because there are flame spurt traps. And if you get lit on fire, that is curtains for you.
Yeah, it's damage over time that is significant.
Yeah.
The flame spurt traps are kind of, I like the way that they're signaled with these little scorch marks on the ground.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit of that, the blood stain on the elevator and Sens feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being aware, like you can get past it. What ends up making this kind of hateful though is the layout. When they start mixing these up with the spear traps, they do a lot of like you dodge past a spear, which is the only thing you can do to that spear, directly into a flame spurt trap.
Yeah.
And there's not really another thing to do.
And also, if you haven't updated your dodge, dashing through them isn't really that viable.
Yeah.
You end up, there would just be a couple of pixels of me that was still in their hurt box. And then, that's the end of your run.
Yep.
Yeah. The boss for this area is Wardrick, the feral master of the guard. And this is kind of a prototypical gigantic dude with a huge weapon fight. And he will kill you in 2 swipes.
Yeah.
It's so hard, Gary.
So this is, I gamed this guy to get my, to get my ghost. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's actually another boss fight that's really weirdly optional with a giant bird.
Oh, weird.
Did you fight the giant bird?
No, I didn't. I would have liked to have.
I know you wouldn't have. It's the same thing as the little bird except big, and he comes with 1,000 little birds.
No, Jesus.
And it sucks. And he's just another way to get into this garrison.
Oh, wow.
It's really weirdly structured. Like you can go in this back door, which is what it sounds like you did, or you can go in this other door.
Okay.
This is the closest thing I think that to approaching an okay boss fight.
Yeah.
Like this is very, very hard, but I had a little, like tiny little bit of that, like Souls feeling of, okay, I've learned this, you know, and, that didn't really happen for much of this.
Yeah. If you can spot your opening and you don't get caught by that first move in his counter or in his combo rather, you can really dependably stick behind him. Like the facing works for you, you know, against it more than it works, you know, against you. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, and that was, you know, as close to a good boss fight as I've gotten in this thing. You kill him, you get the exit key to this, and you exit, and one of the very few like set pieces in the game I really love is you run into this cat that has 2 dead mice in front of it slowly wagging its tail, which is just like this is a very, like, you know, we talk about this lacking lore and stuff like that. Like it is about sentient mice. Like there's a silliness to this that the game doesn't lean into,
right?
Except right here, and when it does, I think it's very funny.
Yeah, it's like, hey, don't worry, I'm full. I just feel like talking right now. It's gigantic too. Like it is cat size compared to you.
As opposed to the bowls, which are like somehow little toy bowls, like genetically engineered.
Yeah, they're teacup bowls.
Yeah. Very, very, very cute.
Yeah,
I like them bowls.
But this cat is actually giving you hints, saying, "Hey, the king, you know, was exiled or wandered into this toxic swamp over to the west, and you know, the key to the castle, you know, was with him. So if you want to proceed forward, you need to head over there to get that."
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So you do. I kept expecting this cat. I think the cat describes itself as a merchant of sorts.
Okay.
Oh, in the first line, and never actually is a merchant.
Yeah.
It's very weird. But so you head over to this very short area, this toxic swamp. The way that there are these patches of swamp, you don't have a meter where you get poisoned and then get damage over time. It just whenever you're in the cloud, you get damaged.
Right. Think of it like it's just acid, not poison.
Yes. Yeah. And you kind of just, you know, there's more mice. There are things to fight here, and poison clouds to dash through. Mm-hmm. It's a really small area. Yeah. And this is of the biomes we're going to get, this is the last new one.
Right.
The rest of the game is just castle after this.
And also one part of a castle with red light as opposed to the normal light. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Fancy. Yeah. But yeah, this is, you know, varied visually. You see the green kind of clouds. I feel like or puddles. I don't know which one they are. They're laid out in cool ways that kind of complicate the encounters. In a pretty interesting way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's still because you move so slowly though, the poison clouds are overly punishing. And again, keep in mind, there's no Estus in this game. So every time, if you get to the end of a poison cloud, which is mandatory damage, and you heal, like that is a resource you'll never get back unless you want to. Like, I guess you could probably farm for them because enemies sometimes drop them, but it feels like a real diminishing returns kind of thing.
Yeah. The boss of this place is Onyx, the feral guardian of the swamp, who is a large crab. It is Revenge of the Crabulons. Yeah.
Giant crab shoots out these poison blobs, and there's a little bit of a race against time in this because the longer the fight goes on, the more areas of the arena become poisonous.
Yeah, he spits out acid, like he's Quelaag. Yeah.
Yep.
And that is the sole complicating factor. Like he's got these claws, you know, as opposed to having this big weapon he needs to swing around. You know, he's got the two sides of him that will just immediately dish out pain. So like figuring out how to navigate around this thing seems to be the way to go. The wrinkle.
Yeah. Yep. And this is not terrible. Like Evan, you know, this guy was not the worst, but it was that kind of not being able to slow down with my admittedly kind of smaller DPS was frustrating to me.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't doing enough damage to make this a DPS race. It just meant that like I would inevitably end up with the arena as poisoned up as it could be.
Yeah.
You know, which kind of sucked. The next area after I got to that, you know, so you get another key or whatever that gets you into Samarkand Prison. Samarkand Prison is what ended up killing me.
Yeah.
And I stopped around here, which is the penultimate area of the game, but this is as far as I got.
Yeah. But yeah, you pass through like a cell area, and then this just turns into more hallways with lots more traps. So they end up shooting arrows that are at least 5 or 6 tumble widths down these long hallways. And this is what you were talking about, I presume. I didn't get this far. What you were talking about, I presume, with like you eventually just have to like dodge through them.
Yes. Yeah. And they're everywhere. Like it's this lattice of arrows and spears. Like long hallways with gigantic arrows that go through that do half of your health. Lots of sections of and these are manned. So these have people running these crossbows. You can eventually get to them and kill the mouse. It's running them, but it's so dense between them.
Yeah.
You also run into spear mice show up a lot, which like do kind of phalanx tactics.
Yeah.
And will show up in like there's a 2 rows of 4 of them that show up. And this is why I'm saying without like area effect, it's specifically, it's the room that killed me the most that actually caused me to give up. And it was after the archers, which I also found really annoying.
Yeah.
The several archer rooms. But in this one, you run up this spear thing. You have to perfectly dodge these spear things. When you dodge to the left to go into this room, there's a fire trap immediately there that triggers. I never figured out how to like not trigger that. And then there are in this very small room, there's 8 spear guys set up in phalanx formation. So you have fire traps and spear traps on all sides. You have this tiny, tiny little space to work with, this defensive powerhouse.
Yeah.
And the only way I was able to make any progress with it was just firebombing them. But I kept running out of firebombs or I'd be hurt from fucking up on the way here. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like I hate this. So I had to stop.
Yeah. It was killing you.
Yeah.
Killing you. Yeah, no, it looks a bit much. Looks a bit much. And like beyond that isn't any kinder because then you start getting actual spear traps shooting out of the walls that you have to discern when they're going to come out. The pattern wasn't especially evident, I think. And then eventually you find these ballista as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah. And there are multiple ballistas.
Yeah.
So
yeah. New roller derby name, Ballista Flockhart.
Ballista, I'm almost guarantee.
Yeah.
I hope there is, but
yeah.
that's pretty good. Ballista Flockhart's pretty good. Yeah, and you also run into an NPC here. You run into Destrian in this jail section. You eventually find, and you can't let Destrian out yet. You have to go get the key for him. He was betrayed by the king, who was corrupted by the necromancer.
Right.
So, and by the time, I think that she is the father of Anna. So Anna wants to eventually go to this fortress, or wanted you to go to this fortress to rescue her father. I think that's Destrian.
Okay.
But I couldn't get him back to the village.
Oh shit.
Like
really?
just because he would die because it's hard.
Yeah.
And you can feed your NPCs morsels, but like I really need them shits.
Those are mine.
So then that was kind of the general malaise as kind of the bigger part that made me give up as well.
Yeah.
Just like like I would like to see. And one weird thing about this game is there's not very much about it online.
No.
So I did not get a chance to look up what happens if you bring Destrian back to the village.
Yeah.
So
given how complicated that is, I'm sure that is how you get like the Infinity +1 sword. I'm pretty sure
it could be.
Yeah.
If they're going to put one of those in there. I know there's you might need it because the evil ending for this, which I wasn't able to find footage of, I just knew about from context clues, is that if you kill all the NPCs. So if you do all the evil stuff, you get the evil ending. I did not. Was not able to see it though, because I couldn't find it online. This area, if you continue through, like, and again, just kind of endless arrow ambush rooms and spear traps, you run into a boss, which is the Royal Guardians, which is 2 of those big horned rats.
Yeah.
So we're out of boss ideas like pretty quick.
Right. Yeah, and you are dealing with these guys on your lonesome. And that is tough to do, especially when one of these was already enough to kind of give you fits. Give me fits, rather. I looked at this and I was like, nope, that would also be another wall. In a game that has been full of walls, this would be this would really, really not be passable, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, they attack with great swords this time. That doesn't alter their tactics that much.
No. And you want to bring your ghost here. Eventually you get to, after this is Samarkand Castle, which is everything that we've done before, but more so. And mice with throwing stars that ricochet off walls.
Yep.
Which is just, that's too much for me to keep track of. Like I can't do it. You can't give me this room full of these guys with ricocheting walls. Like, I can't do the math.
Yeah.
I need Ziggy to like figure out how to get out of the way of this shit. That would it's just I watch somebody do it and I'm like, I would hate this.
Yeah.
Like, I would get so mad at this.
Well, like we mentioned, facing is so important. It really is. And when you have something that can, that seems to be designed to get around your shields, with these enemies that are far more nimble than you. That is not good. It feels like it is designing against your weaknesses in a pretty toxic kind of way.
Yep.
Yeah. Not a big fan. Dirty pool.
Yep.
Yeah.
But eventually you make your way through here to get to the end boss, which again I watched. I can see. This is Zarastar, the Ancient Necromancer, and when you show up, he says like, "Hey, I know you've been being hunted. Those are like my pets."
Yeah.
Or whatever. There's actually a neat set piece thing too, because you run into the king before this.
Okay.
And the king is repentant, and he says like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but if you have Destrium with you, or you fight, if you have Destrium with you, Destrium will kill him, and will just stay there and keep hitting him." So it's this weird little kind of emotional beat.
Right.
Regardless of which, though, you get to Zarastar. He says, "Hey, I've been saying those hunters." He has his hunters waiting in the corners of this. There's 3 of them. I think that's the total number that you can be invaded, and we'll send them out after you in the middle of the boss fight while you're dealing with this caster boss.
Yeah, this pyromancer who is laying down area of effect spells, kind of doing some real high level pyromancy against you. Again, this looked like too much.
Yeah, this is I wonder there'd be an opportunity for a clever gameplay thing here if like he didn't have them if you beat them earlier.
Yeah.
Like if they didn't eat your marrow, they'd be weaker, or they wouldn't exist, or they'd be on your side, or something like that.
Yeah.
I have no idea because I didn't get here, and it's hard to find YouTube footage of someone who did get here.
Right.
Like as you'll find out in the next episode, this is a more obscure game than I thought it was.
Yeah. Again, like when something comes out and purports to be a Souls-like and seems to be, seems to kind of be riding on that cachet. At least our experience is people write us for a couple of months saying, "Hey, cover this," and we think they're playing it.
Yeah, and they're not.
Right.
So weird kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you get the ending, which is really just the ending.
Right.
Roll credits. Roll credits. That's what I mean when I say it's just the ending. Like nothing really happens. There's no big real kind of revelation. The story has been really perfunctory anyway, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And that is Darkmaus. Again, this is a shorter episode because, of circumstances. Also, even if we did go all the way through it, there's only so much you can say about these different combinations in this top-down kind of approach, right? Even in the levels that we did play, you have to take this zoomed out because, I don't know, just like there's not as much to talk about because it's all in the hands, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's and you can see there's only so much to talk about. There's also only so much for him to have done with this verb set. And we see that this game has like 6 areas that are the back half of which is very similar to to each other. Mm-hmm. And one of the bosses is a repeat. A lot of the enemies kind of show up, it's hard to say it's not, it's just kind of copy pasted, but a lot of the encounters are just, what if there is a room full of archers?
Right.
And it leans on that too much. It's one of those things where, like, I feel like there's a dissonance between the limit. Like, I like a limited toolbox. Like, we like that. I like a limited aesthetic like that. But the scope with this many limitations, like, this would have been an awesome, much shorter experience that never repeated anything and was just like, here's a 5-hour Souls-like. Mm-hmm. That feels like, that isn't punishing enough to be 16 hours because you're going to die constantly. Yeah. I think that would have been neat. I think that would have been a cool way to do it. And these ideas, as I've mentioned a couple times, like I would love to see them developed somewhere else or developed by this developer with a sequel or something.
Yeah.
Because I can't bring myself to hate it. It's too neat. It's just too hard and not quite enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. Like so if we take this and map it, like if this is something like one of the earlier Momodoras, if this sells well enough and if there's enough of a demand, enough of a following, I could see them making the accessible, polished version of it.
Yeah. Yep. I would love that.
Yeah.
And I wish this guy well because it is a feat.
Yeah.
and he's still caretaking it, which I think is respectable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't, I'm fine putting it behind me, and I got what I got out of it. This is my second run up against it. I tried to get further and, tried to beat it when we did it for Comrade, couldn't. Came back to it, saw that there were some kind of adjustments, went back to it, couldn't.
Right.
And I think that's just the universe telling me something.
Yep.
At this point. So kind of neat. If you are the person who is just hurt me more about Souls difficulty, which obviously that person has to fucking exist. I don't know any of them. Every single person I know is miserable about this stuff, or apologizing for it out of the side of their mouth.
Right.
Oh, this is really good. It's way too hard, but it's still very good in spite of that. Literally no one is saying that Dark Souls is a good amount of difficulty right now.
Right.
If you are one of those people, play Darkmaus.
Yeah.
I think that you will find a challenge in a new and interesting way, and that is worthwhile.
Yep.
If you are one of the, if you're
a soft boy like us,
if you're part of the soft boy Katamari rolling down in the ravine, maybe give it a shot, because it's cool to support this guy and it's interesting. But it is not going to it's not going to scratch that itch for you, I don't think.
Right.
So
well put.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I have anything to add.
No. So after this, we are doing an episode on Neo.
Actually,
we are doing an episode. We're doing a special.
Yes. So there's going to be another special. This is going to be the one that you recorded with Alec Ike, rather. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And that is the last of those.
Yes. So if you appreciate those top blankety bloop Dark Souls specials, we got another one of those coming. Then an episode on Neo.
No, then an episode on the DLC.
Fucking A, bro. I've lost. I got moused. I got moused.
What happened to Gary? Oh, he got moused. Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. So then the couple episodes of the DLC, we're going to be joined by Richard Pilbeam. Again, it is a repeat guest, but Richard's one of the smartest people doing stuff.
Right.
With Soul stuff right now, and we really like him.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that. It's going to be 2 episodes and an appendix. Then
we have 3. We've got 3 more games that are planned on the docket right now. Gary, we can talk about the order. I penciled them in as Let It Die, Neo, and then Hollow Knight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I jumped the gun by about 6 weeks.
Yeah, you put us a couple months out. That's fine.
It's
I would like more time. I would like more time with Neo.
Yeah, it's so right now we're we're going to do that. Let It Die will be an episode. It's not going to be a series. Neo is likely going to be just an episode as well.
Right.
I put in my 13 hours that I want to put in with that. That could change, but right now that's our current plan.
Right.
And then doing Hollow Knight, which I expect is going to be more up my alley, probably as a full, a couple episodes, go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But Neo will be very similar to this episode, where it's we'll talk about what happens, but we both, will play a degree into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about systems that we encounter, stuff like that. Extend us a little bit of grace, because whenever I'm finding this with the DLC, whenever you talk about something without having seen all of it, somebody will come out and chime in and say, "Oh, but you haven't," and then all of a sudden, no, we're just going to give a survey course of our experience with it.
Yeah. So and a lot of Neo has tons of systems. The way those interact is really interesting and worth talking about. Yeah. Without in a way that I feel is probably more worthwhile than saying oh, it turned out Nobunaga did it.
Yeah.
Or whatever the actual actual plot is.
It's probably pretty close.
I'm almost guaranteed. Yeah. The Neo has a plot about on par with Darkmaus. It's so that's the order we're doing things. If you have anything to say about those games coming up, so Let It Die, Neo, and the DLC, hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact. Please, individual emails for each game.
Yeah.
So if you have something to say about all 3, it helps us out so much if you compartmentalize those.
Yeah. If you send one big message, we'll probably catch we'll catch your thoughts for one of those games, and then the other ones will just fall through the cracks.
Yes. Yeah. So that is you should do so.
Yeah. And that is it. So let's do the usual admin. Thank you, everybody who has supported us on Patreon. If you would like to join them, go to patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv, where you can look at the rewards, see which ones are worth it to you, and kick us a couple of bucks a month. That goes a tremendous, it goes a long way to help us, dedicate the time to doing as many shows as we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Ratings and reviews, all those things are very helpful. We have, as we enter this post-Souls world, it's an interesting time for Bonfireside Chat. We're really excited about kind of what the future brings. One thing is that if you like Bonfireside Chat, especially if you like this off season where we're doing kind of individual games and things like that, I recommend you check out our other shows on our network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch out for Fireballs, chief amongst them.
Yeah. That is a kind of an examination of, non-Souls games specifically, but, video games in general with the same kind of lens.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. We've done a lot of episodes. I think it's fair to say a shitload or a grip of episodes.
Sure.
And go and take a look at the list of games that we have done. And I'm sure that there is one that you have experience with. Even just this year, we've done Symphony of the Night. We're covering Dead Space right now. That's going to be coming out here in a few days. If you're interested in survival horror, just tons and tons of stuff. And we're very proud of that show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Yeah, my mouse brain needs to chill.
Yeah.
I've gotten overwhelmed by mouse.
Oh, he's been moused.
Mouse.
Yeah.
Mouse.
Yep.
Mouse.
That's it. We want to extend some thanks to people who have supported us on Patreon. So our thanks go out to Mike Verano.
Thank you very much, Mike. Trent Amond. Trent?
Yeah.
Back at you, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brian Pitt. I see you on Twitter, I think. And if I don't, I'm sorry. You have a common name.
You do. Brian's been around.
Yeah.
That guy's around. Mikhail Christensen,
Yeah.
also been around. Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Mikhail.
He's in the Slack. He's and whenever we stream stuff, he's always there. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mikhail.
And then Gregory Gregarian.
Man, what a name.
Yeah, I like that.
What a name. It's like the beginning of a limerick. Like there was a man named Gregory Gagarian.
Yeah, you already broke it.
was a Rastafarian?
Yep.
I don't know.
Who couldn't sleep, so he took some valerian. He had a weird dream and blew off some steam
and
punched his way through an aquarium. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That is, fact check us, Greg. Yeah, so thanks very much. And until next time, you are being hunted?
Yep, sir.
Yes, sir. You are. The game. Whoa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon